So I was scrolling on TikTok and I came across a feed that talked about like the Iceland women's strike that recently happened on October 24th, 2024. Yeah, clearly the sweat must have gotten into my brain because October 2024 never happened. Not yet. Clearly, I must have been referring to last October 2023. But don't worry, I had mentioned it later on in the video. Like 48 years after the first strike that happened in 1975. And in that tweet, not Twitter, in that post, they said essentially that although 100,000 women had protested on that day, meaning that they didn't, they skipped out on their jobs, their tasks, their duties on society, and they went on full, complete strike, including the Prime Minister of Iceland, who is currently a woman. You need I mind you, this is going to be important later. God, I'm taking forever to explain something so simple. I found the original video that I was referring to, so I'm just going to play it instead of trying to explain it, because clearly it's a struggle for me.
So 100,000 women went on strike today in Iceland to demand gender equality. The entire population is 370,000. So over 25% of the population went on strike. And I have some crazy news for you. The economy did not come to a stop and it continued as normal. The only memo I got was that HR departments were getting no complaints for the 24 hours that the women were on strike. And men were writing that they were really sorry women didn't get gender equality. But I heard one CEO said it was nice to finally get some shit done, end quote.
Not my words, that was from that TikTok post. But besides that, I wanted to talk just about the general process of that strike, which is just like, why did they do that again 48 years later? Like, the purpose of that strike was to combat, or for women to protest on gender inequality pay and, sexual violence awareness and all that stuff. But, it doesn't really make much sense now than, when it was necessary back then. Because back in 1975, that made sense. Because there was actual, gender inequality and all that stuff. But they really went on strike, more than half a year ago, on October of this year. Or October of last year, I guess I should say, 2023. For the same reasons, as if Iceland has not changed in the last nearly 50 years. Let me just show you, again, the reasons why it didn't make much sense. So, like I said, the very first reason that I was skeptical about the strike is because the Prime Minister of the country is a woman, and nearly half of its MPs are also female. Not to mention that Iceland is considered to be the top country that is ideal for women to live in. Doesn't help. So the first reason for their strike is gender inequality pay, and they list off overall that there's a pay gap among women and men, while also not even bothering to acknowledge the factors that contribute to the pay gap. The keyword undervalued is highlighted there, as if a teacher's salary is supposed to be the same as an engineer. If you want to have the same wages as a man, you need to work the same amount of hours as a man, the same types of jobs as a man, the same job fields as a man. You need to work the same amount of overtime as a man. Work as a man. You have the absolute freedoms to pursue careers, especially when you live in a country that has paid paternal leave. The second biggest reason for the strike is something that personally piqued my interest and it motivated me to make this video because there are things that personally frustrate me about this topic here. And I'm going to go through them as best as I can. Sexual assault, a very important topic that needs to be addressed. But the biggest reason, I guess, that kind of low-key pissed me off is this, once again, this continued perpetual assumption that sexual assault is something that only ever affects cisgender straight women. It's always glorified and talked about from the perspective of female victim, male perpetrator. And it's just such a massive disservice to people who have been victimized by female perpetrators. So much. Like, to be honest, the term gendered violence is something that fundamentally just I cannot agree with. Like, I don't like the term because, again, it just furthers this perception that it's only towards women and that women can only go through this type of thing. And that even to an extent that only women go through that, because there's way less research that is done towards male victims of female perpetrated violence for many different societal, cultural, and even systemic reasons. Not to mention the complete erasures of other groups of people who have been victimized by female perpetrators of this type of violence, like children, elderly people, the physically disabled, the mentally disabled, the LGBTQ plus population. Like, they're often just put to the side burner, and it's always just like straight cis women victim, straight cis men perpetrators. That's all it ever is. Not to mention the toxic masculinity argument is just so misused and mischaracterized and misunderstood. It's kind of annoying and old at this point. It's just fundamentally crazy to me that there's literally women in power, like the government, that kind of power, and you're still going on strike for inequalities, even though a large portion of people in positions of power are women. So, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you have the power to actually implement those policies, laws, like actual changes to make the country a better place for women. But the thing is that Iceland has been a much better country for women compared to, like, the original strike back in 1995. But they want to sit there and act like there hasn't been any type of massive progression and societal change for the betterment of women. Like, it hasn't changed that much. That's what they're trying to do here. And it's just a little disingenuous and, like, very shady for these people to do that. Because these women today in those countries and in a majority of westernized, like urbanized, developed, secular countries are significantly more privileged than any other group of women in today's time and in the world in general, because there are countries, other countries, usually developing countries, where women have way less rights and are treated far less humanely than any other group of women in the world. But these women in these predominantly developed, urbanized countries want to sit there and act as if they're so massively oppressed, like the same kind of oppression that women back in the past, like decades ago, like in the 50s, the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, or even before the 50s at this point, like they want to act like those women don't have, like they have no rights. And it's just kind of ridiculous, personally, to me, that they just come off that way. It's like they're trying to make it seem like that women's safety and women's rights can never truly be achieved until there's no women suffering in any way, shape, or form in the country, which is just an impossible expectation to achieve, because there's always going to be issues, there's always going to be struggles that men, women, children, elderly, human beings as a whole are going to deal with. There is no perfect country where any group of people are going to have no struggles whatsoever. It doesn't exist. The entire predicament just comes off extremely privileged to me. And it's just a massive disservice to women who actually need this type of support.